22-year-old top prospect who has 30 AA at-bats. But he is, one of the top prospects in baseball. He's shown you guys a lot. Take me through that decision.
Yeah, so look, when you do what I do for a living, these decisions are not easy, right? But there's a lot of things you look at with the human eye, and you look at some of the data and the information. This guy had quality at bats for a long time. He's played at a high level at Florida State. Very good baseball. I remember taking Ryan Zimmerman out of that school in 2005 in Virginia, out of that league, I should say, that conference. And these guys, they play at a high level in college. And then he comes into pro ball and he's playing very well. Then he comes to a new team and plays well, even in spring training. He's taken well to a new position. And just being in baseball for 35 years, I know what it looks like. I know what that good young player looks like that, deserves to be at the major league level. And so, we're pretty excited about, what he's going to do for this team and how he's going to blend in.
On the personality side, everyone's kind of glowing reviews of him. What did you first notice when you were scouting him to trade for him and then just having him here?
Yeah, it's interesting that I did see him when he was at Florida State, so I did scout him, and I remember saying, look, I like this guy. I'm not sure if he can play third base. Right field might be a better position. I can remember in my baseball career, guys like, the catcher that Baltimore took that ended up in Washington Nationals. I'm drawing a blank right now, but he played right field and ended up being really good. And so some of these guys, man, they just go to that new position, they fit right in, and it's impactful. Jason Work, that's what I was thinking of. So, look, I feel really confident that this guy is ready and that he's going to make an impact. I love his at-bats, and you can see, when a player is taking pitches just off the corner, that's really good sign for a young player to be doing that. And so I'm very impressed by that.
What about DeCenzo made the roster? What do you like about what he's done this spring, and how does he fit in?
Yeah, so what I like about DeCenzo is that he took the challenge, went to winter ball, worked on his craft in the outfield, hit well in winter ball, came into camp, hit well in camp. And so I'm in the business where when guys show you that they're ready, you believe them. And so I believe he is ready as well. And so Joe will work on how he wants to play these guys. But we can, have a deep bench, a deep roster. We can mix and match. You can give guys a break early because guys are coming out of camp. You need days off. Baseball is a grind. It's 162. And so I wanted to be in a position with our team that, we're loaded. And there's no way to navigate through our lineup anymore, right? We don't want outs at the bottom of the lineup, and we're still working. That's the whole point, that we want to be good all the way throughout. And that's how you get back to the postseason, and that's how you get deep into the postseason.
Joe said you're working through kind of the last spot, especially with Rogers. What's the update there, and what are you looking for in that last spot?
Yeah, Rogers is really making a really good impression on us. He's showing some EVs, and he's really defending well. And so he got us having a lot of good conversations. And you know what? We may have an update by the end of the night or early tomorrow morning on that decision. But he's definitely still in the mix.
Is money an issue with Rogers?
No, money's no issue. Not at all. We feel like, look, if Rogers come on, we're going to have him under contract. We can pay him. It's going to be a good fit. So I think it's more like, let's continue to watch him. Let's continue for him to show us the EVs, the exit velocities that he's been showing us, and the defensive plays that he's been making. It's all starting to come together. And so he's got a good chance. But we'll make a decision. As I said, we'll probably meet early tomorrow morning, or maybe even tonight when we have time. But we've had a pretty busy day, as you guys could imagine.
And how do you just overall analyze your outfield defensively with Altuve left and Smith playing the position he's not playing for?
Yeah, so Smith looks like, to me, he's going to be at least strong average or above average with his, the way he runs, the strides, the ground that he's going to cover. I think he's taken the right field very well. And so I think he's got a chance to be at least strong average and maybe above average by the end of the season. Myers is Myers. He's going to be, plus to elite in center field. He covers a lot of ground. And Altuve's covering ground. He's just got to learn some of the, nuances of this job when you're playing in left field, the way the ball hooks and, some of the things when it comes to transferring throws and different things like that. But his foot speed is also going to help him in the outfield. And so I think worst come to worst, I think Altuve will be average. We know Myers is going to be really good. And I think Cam Smith is going to be strong average to above average. So I think the outfield is going to be pretty good when the push comes to shove. I have no worries.
You are extremely right-handed heavy. Is that still something you're thinking about trying to add more? I know we talk about left-handed bats all the time. Is that still something you're trying to add?
Yeah, so look, here's how I look at this. I think, we talked about this when we were questioned a lot about, do you have a left-hand pitcher coming out of the bullpen? If you have guys that can get both sides out, you feel good in the bullpen, right? And if you have hitters that can hit both sides, then, we feel good about it. If we can add a left-hand bat, that would be great. Maybe we have a left-hand bat coming in our system that may come up and help us out. But make no mistake, I feel really comfortable, even with the pretty much dominant right-handed lineup, because we do have guys that hit righties better than lefties that are right-handed hitters. And so, I see that as a plus.
Why did you guys not play Smith in right field from day one in spring training?
Yeah, because look, you bring a kid in, he's just coming into camp, and look, he started to open our eyes, and we were like, look, this guy is that might be way further along than we think. And so he's playing third base, and Paredes is going to be the opening day third baseman. And so I'm like, man, you know what? When I saw this guy as an amateur, I thought he could end up in right field. I said, let's just try right field. So we have some good baseball people here, and we're able to work with him in right. Jason Bell and Clarkie, they work with him very well, and they got him to the point where he's looking like he's average outfielder right now. I mean, I'm very impressed, by his outfield play, and I'm very critical on defense. Like, if I don't think you can play the position, I'll tell you straight up, and I'm very blunt about that. So I really feel like he's going to be fine. But we put him in right because we're like, look, this bat might be usable right now at the major league level. So let's see if he can find a position. Because of course we have Yordan as our DH.
You decided to carry both. You decided to carry both Smith and DeSanto. Was there any concern about not having enough at bats, I guess, for both of them to play enough to continue developing?
Yeah, that's Joe's problem. Nah. Look, I'll say this. Joe is going to be good at mixing and matching. I think he's going to do a wonderful job of getting DeCenzo the number of bats that he needs to get. I think we're going to actually have to rest Smith some days too, because this is his first time at the big league level. You don't want him playing 10 games in a row. So I think he's going to be able to mix and match. I think the lineup's going to be deep. I think our bench is going to be really good. I mean, we're going to have guys on our bench that can start in other places. And so that's always a good sign, and that means we have a pretty good bench. So I think it's going to be more difficult to navigate through our lineup. And we're going with the offense. And so, the defense matters, but we're really going with an offensive approach. And I think our defense is going to be, at the very least, strong average collectively.
You informed John Singleton he's been released. You informed Cooper Hummel he's not making the club. Can you take us through those two decisions?
Yeah, I mean, look, Singleton, he really filled a good spot for us here at first base when we had a need. He was really good for us, at times. Sometimes he would have some struggles. But look, ultimately, he came in and did a pretty good job of filling in for us. He had some home runs last year, but it's just that, look, we're trying to get a little bit better. And so, we have to made a little bit of an adjustment. That's why we went out and got Walker. Our production at first base wasn't great last year. And so we feel good about Walker, and so it's going to be tough to find jobs around here. Look, when you have to make tough decisions, that means your major league team is getting better. And that's the whole goal in all of this. We want to get better. We want to win the division. We want to go back deeper to the postseason so we can get back to the World Series.
kind of conversations did you have about Chas McCormick and why keep him up here, rather maybe get him more everyday at bats in AAA?
Yeah, so Chas McCormick can, defend in all three positions. We realized that we got two young outfielders in DeCenzo and Smith, and so we can actually, give them some time off and play Chas. You can play Chas in center as well. So we'll find time to get him at bats and let him get back to the Chas of 2023. As I just said, this is going to be a place that if you come and play, it's going to be difficult to get a job, and that's how we want it, and that's how we want to keep it. We want it to be tough to crack the lineup, and I think when that happens, you're going to have a really good team on your hands.
Can you share what were those beginning discussions with Joe and Cam on the possibility of putting him in right?
Yeah, so look, Joe, when I talk to Joe, I go down and I say, look, I'm watching this young kid play, and he looks really good, and I think going with young players is a good place. And our sport is getting a lot more receptive to these young guys coming up, and so I just told Joe, look, this guy's athletic. He's got a good hitting approach at the plate. He really works the count. He drives the ball to the opposite field, and he's athletic. So let's try to find a place to play him. And if he looks like he's going to be, strong average or better, let's roll with it. And sure enough, the guys got to work, and I give the coaching staff credit. They put the time in. They put the hours in. And then I give Cam credit because he was a sponge. He learned. And I had looked up and I saw that he played in the Cape Cod at one point. He played the outfield. When I told you guys I saw him as an amateur, I thought he could play the outfield. So this isn't just something that just, came about. This is just tracking it and putting your baseball mind together to make this decision.
We talked to Joe about this real quick, but Cam's succeeded forever and ever. How do you think that he would handle a failure, being that this sport is a game of it?
Yeah, you guys have heard me say this over and over again, and I can't say it enough. This young man has a great combination of humility and confidence. And when you get that type of makeup on a baseball field, it's pretty special. Humble enough to stay within himself and to understand that, look, I'm not going to show anybody up, but confident enough to know that, look, I'm talented, I belong here, I'm just as big and strong and fast as any of these guys out here. And so that combination is a good combination in baseball.
How much did riding the hot hand for him coming out of spring training and saying, hey, his confidence is probably at an all-time high, how much did that factor into you guys adding him to the opening day roster?
Yeah, I mean, you want to get a guy when he's hot. Just like when you send a guy down to the minor leagues, he gets hot, you feel like you have a need, you call him back up. Him being hot, it made it more enticing, because this is a guy that may carry it into the season. He could, make a big impact early into the season. And so that helps, but it's not your final decision maker that he was hot, It's the other things. He's athletic. He's got discipline. He's got the mental makeup for this. That's a big part of it.
Dan, did you have veterans in the clubhouse kind of asking to carry him?
That would be a Joe question, but I do recall that Joe was saying, look, the veteran guys really like this guy, and they like his presence, and they like him being around. But, as far as I didn't witness any of them saying, look, we got to have this guy. But I know that some of those guys probably talked to Joe and say, hey, we like this guy being around. So that's always a positive. I didn't witness it myself.